For more, we're joined by Claude Barfield from the American Enterprise Institute. He's also a former consultant to the Office of U.S. Trade Representative. Welcome to Biz Asia America. Good to have you on. Let's start with this trade deal, this sort of transatlantic partnership between the United States and Europe. It's being touted as historic. It's being touted as potentially billions and billions of tariffs could be reduced and billions more in trade are possible. Are we getting the numbers right? Is this a historic deal that would be a game changer?
Well, I think it's an important deal. I wouldn't pay a lot of attention to the exact numbers. It's certainly going to be have a positive influence for the Europeans, the United States. Anytime you open markets, whether for trade or investment, you're going to have a positive outcome. The particular numbers we won't know for a long time, beyond just the fact that it's positive. I think it is important. I don't think it's a game changer. After all, the two economies, you take the United States and then the total economies of Europe, are already relatively open for trade and investment. I think it is important to proceed along that line. I do not think, however, that it will be as easy as it seems from the effusive comments today, because you're really talking about things now that are deep inside the border of the two kinds of economies. The Europeans have a view about genetically modified organisms. They have a view about data protection. They have a view about cultural issues that are different from the Americans, and it's very tough to change that.
Yeah, can I ask you what given the closeness of the relationship that we have already with Europe, with respect to the United States, what would be the stimulus for this agreement?
Well, I think the stimulus for the agreement, by and large, came from Europe. The Europeans, and I don't want to sound negative here, but this is a kind of almost desperate way of finding a way out of their economic malaise at the moment. This did not come from Obama, the president, though he has endorsed it now and he has said it's going to be a priority. I think the key priority, however, for the Obama administration was the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which I think can more adequately be described as a game changer rather than whatever the European US-EU trade agreement turns out to be.
I want to read you a statement from the G8 leaders from Northern Ireland. They basically say, quote, "The worst is over," referring to the recent financial crisis that Europe has been going through. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think the worst is over in terms of the financial crisis, and I hope the worst is over in terms of the general economic prospects for Europe. But the Europeans have had a very difficult time of getting out of the morass that they're in. And I think it is still uncertain as to whether or not the worst economically is over. I hope it is true. I think it is much more uncertain for Europe than it is for the United States. The United States has had a slow, admittedly, but steady improvement over the last year. The Europeans, you just never know from day to day when another crisis is going to hit them.
It's quite an interesting exploration of sort of history in the current environment that we're in. The United States took a very different approach to stimulating the economy with respect to the financial crisis by injecting billions and hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy, in fact, close to $2.5 trillion. The Europeans took a very different route. They had to deal with austerity. They had to deal with potential breakup of the European Union. Is it possible Europe's looking at America's model and saying, could we adopt parts of that perhaps to help stimulate the economy?
Well, that's a tough and difficult thing. It would take some time to do. But I would start by saying they face very different situations. The European Union is not a nation as the United States. It cannot act as a nation. And so a lot of the problems that they have had, the fact that they have really divided authority. They are not certain which way to go. The United States could act. Now, it may have acted in ways that I might not agree with at the times, but you do have a central authority in Washington. And we did throw a lot of money at it at the crisis in 2009 when President Obama came in. One could debate whether or not that was wisely spent or not, but you knew that there was something that could happen in Europe. You're not really certain what Brussels or the European Commission really control.
If you could talk to the leaders in Europe, and as you look at the situation they have right now, they obviously want to create more jobs. They need to stimulate the economy. They have to get the consumers to spend again. There's a plethora of issues that need to be addressed. What would you tell those leaders, and how would you tell them to do it?
This won't happen, but I would tell them not to push so quickly and so decisively for increased centralization. I think the problem that they face, and it starts with the currency and goes to other things, is that you do not have the underlying economic substrata to go forward in terms of what would really be a kind of federal union. And so they get these halfway measures, and then you people react against it. So I think the idea of a kind of United States of Europe is one that is a political dream, but has been and will continue to be an economic disaster.
We'll see if they're listening. Claude Barfield, thank you very much from the American Enterprise Institute. Great to have you on Biz Asia America.